What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today is part 2 of our tribute to Junkyard singer David Roach. Our previous episode, we were joined by Chris Gates and Patrick Muzingo. Today, we are joined by Junkyard guitarist Tim Mosher and bassist Todd Muscat. The guys were kind enough to join us for part 2 of our tribute and celebration of David Roach. We got to ask them about, memories and times they shared together and songwriting. And, we didn't want it to be all sad and gloomy. So there's a lot of laughter and a lot of humor in here as well. And David was just that kind of guy. We all know him for his sense of humor, sarcastic as it may be. He definitely had a sense of humor. So we invited Tim and Todd, and they graciously accepted to share some thoughts with us today. And I'm glad they did.
Yeah. To just have everybody, in the room with you, one more time to kind of just sort of not have a send off at all, but to just celebrate, the whole thing and, have these little, powwows with the guys that were with him all the time. I feel like, we're not doing this podcast for us anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You see what I think that it's, and me, I'm too romantic, for my own good, by way of, I think that this is a little bit bigger than just, Tweedledee and Tweedledum and, Wayne and Garth and Beavis and Butthead and whatever. I think that it's kind of garnering something a little bit bigger this time.
Yeah. But
if that makes any sense, and if that makes any sense to him, I mean, am I touching anybody out there? Does anyone out there listening to this episode understand what I'm saying? I think that I'm right.
Here's what I appreciate about the podcast and our friendship with the guys in Junkyard. David was a very beloved character, and we were able to get some of his bandmates on this show to share moments and memories that only they would have.
Right.
And we had 4 of the guys on the show. So I'm grateful to each and every one of them for taking the time to be on the show and giving us sort of that glimpse behind the scenes that only they have. And, we saw them recently here in Austin. The guys flew out for David's memorial service. It was a beautiful service. It was at a creek where he used to play as a child here in South Austin. Family members spoke. You spoke. Chris Gates spoke. It was a beautiful gathering of people. And, as much as you think David from all the times that you and I and even his bandmates, as they will tell you today, all the time that you spend with him and what you think you get together with his family and the people that he grew up with as kids. And all of a sudden you start learning other things that you didn't know about. So it was a really beautiful gathering in Austin on that level, because I felt like I knew David pretty well, but I got a whole new, perception of him by hearing from his brother and his sister and his bandmates and that sort of thing. And that's what we were trying to do with this podcast in these 2 episodes, was sort of extend that for the rest of the people who couldn't be there in Austin, just to kind of get a sense of the celebration and the memorial that we all had for David here in Austin.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a closure thing at all. It's not, because that's a personal thing. That's a personal thing for anyone and everyone who had any kind of love for David, or a love that you have, or respect that you have for anyone. That closure is on you. It's a personal thing. I believe that. The great thing about David is that on one hand you could say, wow, he's like an onion. There's all these layers, but you know what? That's not necessarily true. It's because it literally is a what you see is what you get. And these stories confirm that. His lyrics confirm that. He's not making up stories. As Todd said just a second ago, and you'll see in this episode, he lived it. It was all lived. All the stories that you know of Junkyard told by David are true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what people love about Junkyard is just the realness of it all. And
what you see is
you see is what you get. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's kind of this. Don't think of this as cheesy when I say, he was a simple man.
True. Yeah. So we do appreciate the guys, and we appreciate all the family members that we met during the memorial service, and we appreciate all the outpouring of love from around the world for our friend, our bandmate, and a guy that we hold near and dear to our hearts. It really made an impression, and he will not be forgotten. So we're happy to have with us today Tim Mosher and Todd Muscat from Junkyard on the Talk Louder podcast. All right, fellas. Well, thanks for joining us. We do appreciate you being here, and I wish we were gathered under better circumstances, but I do want to make sure we have some fun today, because I think we all agree that David would punch us in the face if he knew we were just sitting around sobbing when we could be raising a toast and telling embarrassing stories. So
yeah,
we'll try and cover the gamut. I want to go back to just last month. You guys flew into Austin and to be here for part of David's memorial gathering. And that was such a great afternoon and such a beautiful tribute to him. His brother Pat spoke, Chris Gates spoke, Jason here spoke, David's sister spoke. A lot of great stories. I was wondering if the two of you learned anything about David that maybe you didn't know when you got here to his hometown and got to hang around with so much of his family and friends.
I think, of course we learned a lot. I mean, I didn't realize what a mensch he was going all the way back to like high school, middle school. Like he was always the guy. Yeah. He was always the kind of the guy as soon as I knew him, but I didn't realize this was something that had been going on forever. So that's shocking. I thought the great thing about it to me was it was so Austin. It was such an Austin gathering. When people say keep Austin weird and Austin's getting corporatized, I'm like, I don't know. If you were down by that creek, that was an interesting bunch of folk. And it just shows where he really came from, that it wasn't just a cut from the same cloth, not to quote ourselves, kind of life out there. People live differently. And it really showed, which was great, because they all were encouraging of him to be, as we call him, the David Roach. And that was great to see, that from jump, he was that guy,
Yeah.
Todd? Yeah, same thing. My takeaway was basically the same as Tim, just listening to how the way he was when he was, a young man going through high school, and how he related to everybody. And it kind of made, everything got tied together. It kind of made everything made sense, I knew I had heard a few stories, but I didn't, nothing as deep as what was told that day. It was awesome.
Did you guys know that he was the prom king? Was that new to you?
Yes.
Yeah, you knew.
I must have heard it. Yeah. And even at the time was probably like, really? You?
What really struck me was what he wrote in your annual. I love that. I was
Well, I mean, it wasn't a contest, and I think that I tried to drive that home, that it wasn't a contest, and no one was a fish out of water, and everyone was validated. But to read his words written down to me, still wasn't a contest. Yeah. I was validated the day I met him.
Yeah.
And that's all that mattered. Yeah. And I wanted to share that. And I'm really glad I brought that because I just didn't know what else to say that hadn't been said by the family.
Yeah, what you said was really hit me hard. They really I mean, the connectivity you two have, which we've all known about. I mean, at least the guys in the band. I don't know how much history everyone knows about us. I don't think this is really a place for a history lesson, but I think it's amazing how the interconnectivity of your guys' lives. You know what I mean? It is pretty unusual.
He was always there.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to, David's going to be there. I've got to go be there. It was not. It was kismet. It was one of those like, oh shit, there's David.
I think it's also like when I was talking about Austin being weird, like there was something in the water with y'all when that was all happening. Like too many interesting people came out at one time. You went off regular paths and how it all intersects, whether it's Chris or all the other Keep Austin Weird folk that I remember when I first started going there in the late 80s when I would go and play the earliest version of the South by. I'm like, oh, this is great. It was that kind of energy, which obviously, cities get bigger, things change, people leave, all that stuff happens, life intervenes. But it was great to see how it all kind of glued together from this group of folks at this creek have all gone off to do all this stuff. And, the fact that you two are so connected, I thought that was so cool. It's really incredible, really.
Well, none of it was made up. That's
you can't fake that. I mean, you couldn't plan that.
Right,
yeah, no way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for people that aren't clear on what we're talking about, Jason and David went to high school together, and we're talking about the inscription that David left in Jason's yearbook. And Jason read that aloud at David's memorial service. And you've shared that before on this show. I forgot to mention in our last episode with Pat and Chris that we actually had David on the show as a guest a few years ago. So anyone watching and listening to this can go back. And that was a really funny episode. And
in classic, in classic David, Metal Dave is spot on. That you can go back and watch the episode, and I read the inscription to David on the Talk Louder podcast, and he is in disbelief. I didn't write that. Classic David.
Yeah.
I didn't write. That's not me. And I'm holding it up to the fucking camera going, oh, you didn't? That's not your handwriting right fucking there. Oh shit. I guess I did write that.
Yeah. And to follow up with what Tim was just saying, Dangerous Toys and Junkyard kind of came up at the same time. And as Jason said at the memorial service, it was really interesting how David and Jason's trajectory after being buddies in high school and then being in local bands and then getting signed to major labels and then having their videos debut back to back. So the trajectory was very parallel. And
and then I found him in the street out in front of my house.
Yeah, then he was your next door neighbor. Exactly.
Just a few years ago, I'm backing out of my driveway. I'm going, David? I can't make it up. I just can't.
You can't plan that. Yeah, that's great.
Well, it was each of you. We'll start with Todd. What was your first impression the first time you met David, and did it change over the years, or was he always kind of what you saw was what you get from day one?
Well, I saw him first. I went and saw Junkyard in L.A., and I was blown away by him. He was just so energetic and just the perfect frontman. And, me and Pat had played in bands and stuff together. And so after that was done, I went backstage and met him, and he was great. He was just very warm, funny, no rock star airs about him. I mean, at the time, it never was, but just very genuine and warm with a really kind of sarcastic, and taking the piss all the time on the other people. He was a great dude. But I mean, when he was up on stage, he was one of the better local frontmen that I had seen playing around, and hats off to him, man. He was great. But yeah, funny and warm and very welcoming. I'd been in, and when I got in I'll keep going here just for a second. After they had asked me to join the band, I think it was maybe a week or two later, I mentioned that I was having a birthday, and then all of a sudden they planned this birthday party at my house I was renting, and him and Chico was out in LA. They cooked for us. They barbecued. We had what did we have? Carne asada tacos.
Yeah.
Taste of Texas and a lot of beer.
Yeah, yeah. He was quite the cook, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't think,
Yeah,
he never
he
cooked
was.
for me, but I know,
Oh, yeah.
his background in working in restaurants and everything. Tim, what about you? First impression, and did it change over the years?
Well, I mean, obviously our relationship changed and grew and had ups and downs and all that stuff. I came from the East Coast at the fall of '86, and some of the first folks I met, when I always say got off the bus or off the boat, were Chris probably first, and David. I think Todd was in there, the guys in the original Damn Yankees, the OG Damn Yankees. I met them very early. So it was all in that same kind of time frame. I saw Junkyard before even Pat joined, playing at the Anti Club, and that must have been the first time I saw him. But I think I had met him before, because for some reason we had the idea like we should reach out to Chris Gates. So we had no idea how we just thought like, we'll just tell him we're from DC, like some like thinking like that, like that'll mean something. It actually kind of did. He's like, oh, okay, well, what are you guys doing? Everyone was kind of like fishing about trying to find things and make things happen. So people were pretty open. And I remember him being just very quiet. I remember thinking like, oh, he's mellow. And then I went and saw him play, and I'm like, oh, he's like a real frontman, like a frontman. And I'm like, those are really rare. And he was so good. And it wasn't like there wasn't a lot of frontmen then. That was a frontman era. There was Phil from LA Guns. There was fucking Axl Rose, for Christ's sake. I mean, there were a good frontman fronting local bands. Some were better than others. And he was just like, he had his own thing right away. Junkyard seemed to be hatched pretty fully formed from what I could see from the outside. And I do remember thinking that, because I was singing in my band. I'm like, I could never do what he's doing. So I've got to find something that's really my own, because this ground has been covered a lot by what Junkyard is doing, and specifically what David is going to do. Kind of made like, well, you sort of all trade in sort of the same world, but you are not in his league in this department. And it was really, there was a lot of eye-opening events when I first got there. But the fact that we quickly became, at least initially, like the guy you chat with at the club, and then you end up living on the same street, and then eventually you're having barbecues. And yes, as Todd said, he often cooked. I don't think we'll talk about that. That was always the best, because if you had a barbecue and you asked David to come, he would generally say, do you got a barbecue, or should I bring a hibachi? And he would cook. Even at your weird, shitty apartment in East Hollywood, he'd cook on the fucking balcony or whatever. That was his thing, and he would start roasting the carne asada and beer like 2 days before the thing. So whenever we had a get together, we tried to get David to come just because he loved to cook, and he was such a great, otherwise it was like chips and dip, and just like we didn't have any money really anyway. He'd go buy the really cheap flank steak at the whatever, the Food for Less or whatever, and just falling off the truck kind of thing, and he would marinate it for 4 days so it would be like you could actually chew it. It was anyway. So it was like he was just part of the group of us. They were all there. Junkyard were just a few steps ahead in terms of concept and all that other stuff, but also career wise. But they were the first ones. Todd could say this, that when we started to get our things together, Todd with Kill for Thrills and me with Broken Glass, they were the ones who elevated us. They put us as opening slots. They moved us up the food chain very quickly. Yeah. And that was really out of the goodness of their heart, initially. And I think they wanted to have a scene too. It's better to have your friends' bands. It's cooler. It's very punk, all that stuff. But David was always really, really like supportive. Like he loved my band Broken Glass. He always talked about it, to the point where I was like, really? Was it really that any good? Because you never know. So my early connection with him was like just another one of the guys around. Then I saw him playing, like, oh, well, he does that thing better than any one of us, so I better find my own thing. He was like someone to look up to, but also realize there are people that are just unique, and he was unique.
Yeah. You mentioned your band Broken Glass and how supportive David and the rest of the guys were. So much so that Tried and True is a song that you brought with you from Broken Glass. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we had started to get some start to happen. It was a pretty exciting time. A lot of bands were getting signed. Todd got signed around the same time I did. And we would open for Broken Glass. We kind of swapped. Very rarely, we sometimes even the three of us on a bill. But then at Broken, I think Kill for Thrills got held on to their deal a little longer than Broken Glass. Broken Glass got dropped, and we were out kind of fishing about for a new deal. And I just kept writing. I was trying to write new songs and stuff like that. And this was the song that we had, that we were playing live even. You know, I knew it was a good song because I think we used to open with it, which I think is insane, but we did. And then he always was going on about, I think Brian was a big fan of it too. I think that was one of these things. And that was the beginning of my real relationship with the band. Because then they did Tried and True. Todd was there. Yeah. And he was in the band by then. I guess that was probably the first. And then there was the thought like, well, let's just start writing more together. So for that third album, I was dropped. So I had a lot of time. Tons of time. And they were in theory working on this third album. And I was texting with you, Dave, about this because you had that song, and that song that was on one of the previews, and I'm like, I said, I very much remember, like the memories that come flooding back, especially with David, are really about our writing, like because it's such an intimate thing. And I was thinking about it. I've probably co-written more songs with David Roach than anybody else in my career. Wow. And when you co-write with David, it's not like he comes in with a fully fleshed, it's a very interactive thing, with all the good and bad that goes into that. It can be very stressful. We can argue, we can sit there and, not know what to do, but sometimes we came up with great stuff. So he was always a really early advocate of my songwriting and brought that into Junkyard. I think everyone's like, oh, that's a good song. We need a good song. It was also like, that's going to be the big ballad when that was the thing you did. And I was like, yeah, I think it could be, that was as good as Talks to Angels, if you ask me, and that kind of a thing, a little bit more Stones-ified, Wild Horses vibe. And then I just came in and started writing with them and we would do it at their shitty apartment on Orange in Hollywood. Brian and David lived together. I'd come over and David and I would sit around and I'd have pages of lyrics and he'd have pages of lyrics. I'd say something, he'd write it down. Brian might have some changes. And sometimes we went to Chris's place and did the same. So when I hear that, the unreleased third album, whatever they're calling it, the Triple X, and then we did our own version of that, all I have is those memories of writing sessions. It just comes like flaring back. And so, yes, I mean, they were really supportive of Broken Glass in as much as like, putting us in front of people. Our time had come and gone in terms of the industry, but David didn't think my songs had gotten any worse. They just thought that that's the way it goes,
Yeah.
So, they were the first ones to like really, a couple people who covered some of my songs, but that was the first time someone says, no, we're like a major label band. We want writers. We need writers. We're not going to go get Desmond Child or some shit. We need someone who's of us, who understands us, who can help us write this next record. I think that's really what, and in the sense it was a big leap for them because I wasn't a terribly well-proven thing. But in another sense, they knew I understood them better than anybody they were going to bring in. I literally had lived in their pockets. People don't understand how close we all were. Todd, all the guys in Kill for Thrills, all the guys in Junkyard, all the guys in Broken Glass, Flies of Fire, we were in each other's pockets almost every single day, whether we had shitty day jobs together or out at the clubs every night, girlfriends, all that. Like, we were very close, and we literally all lived on the same street. I mean, you'd walk down the block, and there's the Junkyard apartment, the Broken Glass apartment. A little further down was the Jane's Addiction apartment. That's just the way it was. So it was very much like just life. Like, this is what we were doing. Everyone get involved. It was, I mean, I guess that's a punk thing. I don't know. Todd, what do you think?
Yeah, same thing. I think it was a punk thing. We were all ex-punks and like to hang out together.
Yeah.
We did a lot of hanging out together. Even, we'd rehearse, and then nightlife was always, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? We'd hit the same spots and very supportive of each other. We always go to each other's shows. A lot of times, like you said, we play together. I'm glad you brought up Flies on Fire. They're another band that was part of that crew. I forget what the original question was. But,
me too. I went off on a tangent.
No, I was just curious, what your first impression of David was and how it changed over the years, because obviously you guys spent years and years, and as expected, and I expected this as well, that answer is going to grow along with the relationship, and it's going to change the more time you spend with each other and that sort of thing. And for anyone curious about what Tim was talking about, the album, a lot of that stuff came together on an album called Old Habits Die Hard.
Yeah.
That's out there now, and you can find a lot of the songs that were going to be the third Junkyard record.
Yeah, a lot of people are mistaken that it was the third record. It was just a collection of different sessions that we were demoing, trying to get Geffen to say, okay, you guys got enough songs, let's go make a record. And so that's the collection of what was happening at the time.
It's good stuff.
The old school record company was a 24-track, 2-inch tape demo.
Yeah, yeah.
We spent so much money. It was insane.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 different sessions at 3 different studios. I know one was with Rob out in the Valley.
Yeah, Rob Schnaff did some. He was a DC guy too. That's how he kind of came into Junkyard world. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in and say the fact that, these stories and these scenarios where, whether it be rehearsal, each other's house writing, you got a lyric, you got a riff, day to day, day in, out. And then when it got dark, it was the party, right?
Yeah.
Just the fact that it's this day to day, these are the days of our lives. It's just a constant, it doesn't stop. And, we're going to go on the road. Okay. And then you come home and you do it all over again. I don't like to say now that David's gone, but, cause he's not, this is proof right here. The fact that you guys have all that time together and people who are in love with the songs, that have a romance with the songs and the lyrics and the whole thing. Hearing you guys talk about it like this gives a whole other, whoa, that's the germ of why I am in love with this song or this lyric, is the fact that this family is creating something from nothing, and I'm taking it for granted just by pressing play or downloading it or wherever your choice of analog or non-analog, just us here today and hearing you guys go, yeah, it was every day. I was in David's face every fucking, he got tired of me. I got tired of him, and now it just to produce something that means something to a lot of people out there, hearing you guys talk about it. I just wanted to underline that and how important that is. Someone out there hearing you talk about it, because the first episode we did with Pat and Chris is already coming up roses exactly how I'm just explaining it. People are like, oh my God, wow.
I think one thing I want to stress that, like you say, you just push play and it's there. I was in the room with them writing, and they had Junkyard had great songs before I ever came around. There was real thought and effort and determination with the writing. David really gave a shit about his lyrics. Mm-hmm. We talked about lyrics a lot. I was really principally brought in originally just to kind of punch up some lyrics, and he would write down lyric things for me, and he would pop them out 10 years later. Like, remember when you said this is a great line, let's go from there. He was always had an eye for a phrase or an emotion that he could build off on. And I think when people think it sounds like we just kind of it just happens and there it is, that's the goal. But man, we labored over it. We really thought, like, is this really what we want to say? Is this really good? That kind of, even the early days when you think we had it all figured out and everything was coming up roses, I think all of us understood in the end that if the songs didn't have any merit, we were going to be over quickly, because whatever the style would fade. And then we come from a tradition of songs. And I think one thing, David and I would always talk about, or songwriting things that even other people in the band necessarily wouldn't be interested in. We could sit there and talk about Dylan for like 3 hours. We would just talk about stuff like that, think like nerd out, but in his world. Like, he was such a lyrically driven writer, and he was such a great lyricist. He's a guy that I could just like come up with let's say cut from the same cloth on the last album. I just kind of had the title, but I knew once I gave that to him, he was going to take it and make it amazing. I said, this is a David Roach line if I ever heard one. And he was great like that. And so I think the one thing I want to say is like the reason maybe we're slow to put stuff out, all that kind of other stuff, we have a really high concern about what we're saying is having an impact because we know it lasts. That's why people still care, because Simple Man's a great fucking song.
Yeah.
No one knows about the vests and all the other shit. And in 10 years, no one will know about probably what David was like on stage unless they go and do so. It becomes just the songs. And I always say, like, when we were playing and we could be like, maybe we were opening, or it was just kind of a shit night, we weren't drawing very well, or just we weren't getting over. Maybe we decided we're going to play more new songs because we're being dicks or whatever. And I said, we got Simple Man just down the. I would look at the set list and see like 2 steps down. I'm like, all will be well when we get to Simple Man. And having that kind of piece of work that you can literally build, and it's like I always describe Junkyard as having an incredibly strong foundation song-wise. The pillars were really good, but to me, Simple Man would always be this, like, if we can't get him with this, we're not going to get him, because it is just so ironclad good. And when you have that, you feel. I always knew that we could get over, because I always felt that Junkyard before me and when I was in him, we had better songs than most, and that's why people paid to see us. David was an amazing frontman, but man, watching people hear Simple Man is a much different experience than being in the crowd and having it play to you. When you see the look on people's faces when he sings that song, you're like, wow, this is heavy and big. And I loved it. People always say, like, what's your favorite? You hate playing Hollywood? I'm like, no, I love it because they're so into it. It's so great to see that coming back at you. It's not, that to me is the greatest thing. And I don't know how David felt about it. I know he's like, I'm sick of playing that fucking song. Like, I don't know how you look at the audience and see him going so crazy and loving every single utterance of those particular tentpole songs and not feel good, because I did, and I didn't even play on that fucking song, Yeah. So I always like to stress that, like, Junkyard was a song band, because that's what I'm into. If Junkyard didn't have good songs, I wouldn't have joined, or they wouldn't have, it wouldn't have happened at all in the first place. So I think David as a songwriter is probably a little undervalued, probably a little bit, I think because it's a lot of co-writes, and he was very deprecating about his songwriting. He would be the first one to say, oh, Tim did that, Brian did that, Chris did that. But I know that none of it would have worked without him.
Yeah.
Yeah. The songs don't sing themselves, and David, you're going to sing. David, you sing. So
yeah,
he's the conduit, whether he wrote the lyric or the riff or not. It doesn't matter.
He would say to me, it's like we were doing work on new stuff, like, why don't you sing a song on the album? I go, that is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. I don't care if I'm the greatest singer in the world. No one's buying a Junkyard album to hear someone else besides David Roach sing a goddamn song. You know what I mean? As I always say, like, if I called in sick to a gig, no one's asking for their money back. If David does, it's canceled and everyone gets their money back. Yeah. That's how the pecking order goes. We all know that. We all accepted that, Yeah. It's like, okay, this is one for all and one for all, but there is a 1+1, and that's you. So we're all there to serve you. We like that role. We're not uptight about it. That's the thing why the band worked. We didn't have the ego about that, because he was egoless about himself.
Well, if David were here, he would be arguing all this shit anyway.
Absolutely.
That would be the party right now. He'd be saying,
oh, that's bullshit. I need Tim. I need Todd. And we'd be going like, nah, not really.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to just add about his songwriting was he used to carry around this, I don't know what it was made out of, but it was like some sort, he'd either have a book, it changed all the time, but he would have all that papers and, matchbooks, and there was all kinds of weird stuff, and just anything he could jot down lyrics on were in there. And I remember he opened it up one time when we were on the road, and because he would still do that out on the road, just jot things down, something come to his head, and just all these papers kind of like flew out and fluttered, and he was grabbing
totally.
them. Yeah, that was great.
Fucking mess.
Pig pen songwriter. Yeah.
Just
not
love it.
disorganized, but great.
Well,
so disorganized.
I love the point that's being made here, because the exact same point was made on the previous episode with Chris and Pat, and that is that David, his lyrics were very genuine. They were based on observation. They were not sort of made up, fantastical, fake, especially at that time in Hollywood. And I think it shows in the records. There's nothing you can listen to a Junkyard record today, and you don't get that cringy, embarrassing feeling like you hope somebody doesn't catch you listening to this, because the songs still hold up. That record could come out today. That first record could come out today, and it would fit right in.
I think the majority of his lyrics were lived, stuff.
Yes.
Lived.
Well said. That's perfect. Exactly. Yeah.
He had a gift for a phrase, man. He really did. He could take a very small moment and make it special. That's what makes him a great lyricist. Like he could see a very small thing and then make it broad and appeal to a lot, make it interpretable to a lot of people's lives, even though it was very specific to his. He had that ability to kind of turn that around,
Do you guys think that, I mean, I know how I feel about my lyrics, but it's not about me. Think like this. It's like, do you guys have any idea if David didn't really I mean, we all know his personality. He was going to be the first to go, yeah, I don't know about that. So I'm glad you like it, kind of a thing. But do you know for certain if there's any song that he wrote and recorded that he was like, finally, that's the one. Finally, I can be proud of something that I created. Do you think that he had any moment at all where he could actually do that?
Good question.
A good question, because I mean, yes, he had thoughts about other older songs, and they were generally like dismissive, or I won't say negative, but whatever that is, because the situation overtakes you. Like, you remember where you were and how that was, and the specifics of it. But
I'm sure back in the day he appreciated those lyrics, but like you said, you grow out of those lyrics. I mean, the newer stuff, I know a lot of the stuff he was proud of. The River, I think he really was proud of those lyrics.
Yeah, I think one of the great things, or good things, or one of the things about kind of rebooting this system and getting David a chance to write some more is he could really, as a grown up, and not be chasing something in theory, except for his own history, I guess, look into the work and see and feel like it really did represent where he was at. He wasn't answering to an A&R person or a need to get on a tour, or a need to do all the stuff that goes into that, which creates a different kind of art, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But this was a different headspace. So I remember him when we were working on High Water, which is the closest thing in my memory, even though I could talk about the third album, but that was a long time ago now. And I do think he always really believed and what we were doing in the later work. And I think there wasn't anyone he would go, he wouldn't do the little kind of, And I remember him being really great making that record. Like, I remember it was someone who had been kind of bound up for a bit and was able to really do it. And we did a lot of the original sessions just in my studio, which were in theory writing sessions, but sometimes he would just come in, he'd have this piece of paper and he'd just sing the thing down, and I luckily record it, and I go, well, shit, that sounds pretty good. And that was I know Kindness for the Dead on that album. That's the first take vocal. He said, I think I got something for this. It went, and maybe we, cleaned up a couple bits and bobs. He seemed really, let out of a cage almost. So
he was proud of that record.
I know he was proud of that record. I think he thought it was representative of him. I think he thought probably the first two records, no matter what, they were compromises that he had to make. He probably felt real or imagined. A lot of this is in his head, of course, but I think there was going to be that. I don't know how you can't be proud of some of those early songs, because they're great. I tell anybody, you try and write blues. You try and write that. That's a really hard song to write. The simplest song, Simple Man literally has 3 chords. That's high level. Simplicity is the highest form of genius to me. It really is. And
a song like Blues, where it sounds like he's just talking about, farting and fucking and whatever, but the reality is, someone can write a song like Blues and make it all up. That's what I meant to say right now. So on the other side of the coin, I believe Blues I believe that he lived it. I believe that it was exactly how he says it, about how, he's a boozer, he's a drinker. Everybody knows that. It's part of his life. It's part of the lifestyle.
Mm.
So when you look at the back of the record, you're going, oh, shit. These guys are fucking dirty, and then you you read the lyrics and you believe it again, and you're going, I knew they were fucking dirty, and no one ever questioned it, and they fucking shouldn't, because you don't have any money and you're almost going to kill to get another fix, right? So I
always remember
it's a dangerous place to be, as we all fucking know.
Oh yeah.
And so, it's not supposed to be so cut and dry where, oh yeah, I can take it or leave it. No, no, you can't take it or leave it. So it was a do or die. And I think the stories that he's telling in all these lyrics, whether it be on his proudest moment or the first record, wherever he was, I still think it's all real, and he was not bullshitting anybody, and that's why he was so beloved.
I think when you talked about this little family, like all this mob of bands and friends, and to me, David really crystallized what our lives were like at that moment. It really is a window into what we lived like then, how we lived then. He was telling the story of us. He lived a more extreme life than almost anyone I've known, and more extreme than me, of course, because I just I just wasn't built for that. But but had I had feelings like blues and been close to that? Of course. But he really had an ability to speak about what we thought was our little world, which it was. It was a 20-block radius of fucking Hollywood that about a half a dozen bands were in. But he seemed to crystallize those little moments better than anyone. So when you would hear them, you're like, I know exactly what he's fucking... oh, yeah. He gets it. And then the fact that you take it out into the world and people still respond, it was really heartening. But he also really was speaking for us. Like, yes, that I know what you are. I've been there. I'll probably be there Thursday, actually. It was very in the moment of the time, speaking for us. Now this, and that was, I found that really great, because he wasn't writing, like you said, lyrics that you would expect from from bands of that era. He wasn't doing that. He could, we're too ugly for that. I'm like, it just wouldn't interest him. I don't think he was that interested in that.
I think David and Chris kind of personified that really early on. Like, well, Chris is, I don't like it when he says it, but it's, it's kind of perfect. Nobody wants to play with a fat guy, and I'm losing my hair before I can grow it, and it when the lyrics weren't about, the songs were not going to talk about any of that anyway. No. So it wouldn't have worked anyway.
No.
The things that they were saying, oh yeah, nobody wants any of that shit anyway. When they look when they look at us, they're going to think, oh, those guys, that doesn't fit. That's, look at those guys wearing spandex or whatever.
It's because it was an image conscious. Look, Junkyard was image conscious. We're image conscious to the very end.
Well, and
they thought about it,
And those guys talk about, when you, I'm referring to Pat and Chris. It was, obviously it was like, well, what are we going to do? But it wasn't like in your defense, it's about the songs that you guys were writing every day, and being conscious about what it is that you're really trying to do, because once again, songs don't sing themselves, but when they do, they better be fucking good.
Yeah.
Instead of look at my hair and my tight pants, fuck that.
I remember saying at the time, like, no one looks at the Beatles and think, wow, look at their long hair anymore. All they care about is the songs. That's all that matters. All these things they're ephemeral. It's nice to look back and go, oh, they were cool looking. That was cool for the time. That's all great. That's all part of the packaging. But if the Beatles didn't write shitty songs, it would be like, oh, what is this what was that weird thing where these guys with this funny bowl haircut? But that's not what happens anymore. So we always were conscious of it because we are in the business of trying to make a living playing music, and you need to, whatever you need to do, you need to market yourself or promote yourself. And then there is general standards and all that bullshit. But we all kind of had the sense that if we could write great songs, we might be able to survive beyond the haircuts that we had at the time.
Yeah.
And we were conscious of all that stuff. There's no doubt about it. We thought about it, you know what I mean? But we wanted to be popular too. We all liked girls, you know, it's how that goes. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, no one in the end, no one's going to go, oh, Guns N' Roses. Yeah. The guy with the bandana on his head. They're not going to fucking say that. They don't fucking think that. They don't give a shit about that. Oh, AC/DC. Oh yeah. The guy with the schoolboy uniform. Fuck no. They're not going to even remember that. They don't give a shit about that. This is what we're talking about. And it's just important to me, to us, you know, as fans, and then, you know, creators to recognize that it's about what you guys and David were creating, something from nothing, from dirt to, you know, barbecue.
I love the insight that you just offered on High Water, because I think High Water is a masterpiece. And the fact that, you know, you were talking about David was kind of, I mean, that album took 25, 27 years before it came out, based on the last album, or 6s, 7s, and 9s. So 20 plus years in the making, let's call it. Not to say that things weren't brewing, you know, off in the corner by themselves, or that somebody's not writing all the time or whatever, but the album didn't coalesce and come and make a public appearance until 27 years later. And I love what you said about you were kind of liberated to do what you wanted to do. There was no record label expectations. There was no MTV video expectations. You weren't trying to get on a tour package or whatever. So in a lot of ways, that album is very pure for its time and from the creators. And I think it's a great record. I always have from the moment I heard it. I wore that thing out for a couple years. It was on repeat in my car. And I think it stands up as well as anything you guys ever did. So
the only goalpost I recall, and talking to David about it, like, what is our goal? Well, finish it would be great. If we put this record out, someone will say it's actually better than 6s, 7s, and 9s, or it's actually better than the first album, or I actually like it as much, or I've never heard of this band. This is the first record by them. I think it's great. Like, we had people who didn't even know there were the first 2 records. That happened a bunch. Yeah. And to me, that was really my goal. The fact that people connected to it, I knew that we were going to do a record that was of us. It just took a while because we were in different places in life. You know, David came in with a lot of great songs on that. Many of those songs were in his head that were sung to me, and I would play them on guitar and figure out what he was doing, whether it was Wallet or what's the good one? The country ballad. I got no plans for tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
Styrofoam Cup. He had that. Yeah. He kind of sang it to me. He goes, and do like a Joe Walsh kind of thing there. I'm like, okay, I'm not Joe Walsh, but let's give it a shot. So many of the songs were like that. And, you know, and I remember thinking like, oh, he's got just great stuff. And then once we sort of had the idea where it was going to go, you know, we had Faded as kind of our linchpin, like, well, we got that, you know, we got a thing. Now, where do we, you know, how do we put it all together? I remember thinking, but it was also like, well, that's a pretty high bar. It's a pretty good fucking song. We need to, and where else can we go with it? And thoughts like that. So we were able to really plan the record out and do it in a way that but many, many hours of me and David sitting, staring face to face, either singing, trying to do harmonies, rewriting lyrics. It was hard labor, you know, and, you know, our creative relationship could be up and down in terms of our personalities. When we would tour, you know, David was living in Santa Barbara, and we'd have to fly out for weekenders, wherever we're going. Inevitably, he'd come and stay at my house in the Valley or in Hollywood, and I lived there. So he would spend days on end with me, you know what I mean? And typical David, even when I got to the point where I actually had a guest room, he would only sleep on the couch. That was him. You know, he's like, why? My wife's like, why is he always on the couch? I'm like, you know, these are things I'm not going to argue about with him anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not going to get there. It's like, well, are you worried about waking him up? I'm like, if he's not worried about me waking him up, I'm not going to worry about waking him up. You know what I mean? He just wants to have ESPN on and do his thing. You know what I mean? He was him. I mean, like, David Roach was him. Like, you can't, like, accept him for what he was, because he was exactly in the same core person. But, you know, there could be times where we would, because we were trying to do something really good. We weren't going to half-ass it. We weren't going to be like our peers that were putting out needless records that didn't say a fucking thing.
Yeah.
We wanted to stand alone from that. We wanted to not necessarily be better than our peers, but we wanted to make a record that could just exist in of itself. Like, oh, here's a new band called Junkyard. What's this about? That's what it was. But the first thing was like to have the hardcores go like, oh, it's almost as good as 6s, 7s, and 9s. If I got one of those, I figured like we won. That was it. I know it's a pretty low bar, but you know, those records are seminal to people. Those are people's like lives. And to even make it imprint at all or move into that at all, I was like, it was a successful record in my mind. Absolutely. Everything else was bonus and wonderful. I loved that, you know, that people liked it and it's had a life, and I'm glad we did it. I'm fucking glad we did it. But I remember when we finished it, I'm like, oh, I'm fucking glad this is finished, because it was a motherfucker to make.
Well, for what it's worth, in my humble opinion, it was worth every bit of teeth gnashing and hair pulling and sweating, because it's a great, great record. And anyone watching and listening to this episode that hasn't picked up High Water, you owe it to yourself to get that record. It's amazing.
I mean, I want to dispel the idea that just great art just falls from the sky and it happens. You got to fucking work.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We worked really hard, and we weren't going to do something that we didn't feel was really representative of where we were. You know what I mean?
I was going to save this question for last, but it dovetails nicely into what we're talking about here, because you are talking about the songwriting sessions for what became High Water, and the more current collaborative efforts between yourself and David and the band. And I don't know how much you can or want to share, but I know, because you were kind enough to share with me, that there are some songs that weren't on High Water that are floating around out there. And I'm asking on behalf of the fans, are we ever going to hear any new Junkyard material, meaning songs that you have in the can?
I mean, Todd can speak to this as well. We had every intention of going back in probably right before COVID to do the follow-up to High Water. We had a lot of it written. We still have a lot of it. And I think when the idea was, oh, let's just take 2 songs from it and put it out as a single. That's what Lifer and Last of a Dying Breed were. Those were going to be kind of the, you know, we had an album. We had beginnings of mock-ups of art, didn't we, Toddy? I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like it was pretty far down the path. And so we were writing songs. We had a bunch of songs. I think we have a bunch of really good songs. And then after COVID, there was another move like, okay, let's really get this thing up and running. And we went and cut live drums, and we're kind of going through it. Time has gone by. You know, a lot of the production work falls into my lap. And since I kind of do that for a living as well, it's kind of like a busman's holiday. It's a lot of work to get the stuff organized. And I know what High Water was like for me to do. It was very hard, and I don't know if I had it in me personally, but I think the songs are great. I think there is a lot of really good. David loved them. He was on me every single time we spoke about these songs are better than High Water. He absolutely believed that. He thinks they're just better. Yeah. And so
well, I'm gonna take it one further, because this is also a Metal Dave question, but I'll use my terminology. Are there any scratch vocals?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
No, we sang a lot.
Oh, good. That's good. That's so good to hear.
We have a lot.
Oh, thank God.
Some are better than others.
Yeah,
but they hadn't been really.
You clean that shit up.
Yeah, they were uncleaned. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the demos that we were at were pretty organized. I mean, we're very close to like, oh, this is basically it. Like, let's get Jimmy in, and because Brian played on some, I had Brian play on some stuff, and you know, we were trading around. So no, the vocals are there. You know, I think.
Oh, that's so good to hear.
I think somebody with a bit more, a little distance and a little machine savvy could really polished them up to make them a little bit more. But I know a guy. I know a guy.
I'm sure you know a guy. I'm sure everyone here knows a guy that would gladly do it for pretty much nothing.
But in my opinion, so we went in and even cut a couple new songs. Like Chris gave us a song that was really good. That I ended up singing just so we could have a guide vocal. And I think before it all went tits up, the plan was for David to come down and finish singing what we had, which was basically, we're looking for 2 or 3 more songs. So we basically have 8, besides you add the single, we have 6 that have not been released that are basically ready to go, in my opinion. It just means we have to see where our label is at, see who we're going to put them out with. And then life intervened, and we didn't really want to be.
No one's fishing. It's not a cash grab. It's not a hurry up because the body's still warm kind of bullshit. It really is. There's a legacy, and David's story will be told over and over, and no one's forgetting. No one's gonna forget. Right. Well, so the fact that you have these little cherries for everybody to eat, as we just go through the rest of our days, hearing David a couple more times is going to make people just smile more and more. So this is good.
Todd was in the room when we went to Omaha for his wedding, which was at the hospital.
Right.
And we only spoke of the future. People ask me what we talked about. He only spoke of the future.
Yep.
Let's get this thing back up and running. But one of the last things he probably said to me was, I really want this shit to come out. And so that's really been kind of our edict. Like, we've got to organize this, because it was, I think, Todd, was one of the last things we talked about of real substance. It's like, let's get that shit out. I want to get it out. And he was thinking, when I get better, we'll go out and support it and all that other stuff. But it was something that needed to happen. So yes, it is going to happen. It is there. The stuff is there.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, as long as it takes, just some sort of swan song, you guys are all lucky to just have your fingers in that pie. And
very.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful way to just say, we love you, David, is just make sure that his last wish is going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put anyone on the spot here, but
it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Tim was kind enough to share some of those songs with me a while back, and I heard them and I was like, man, these are really good. And people have been asking, and now I did not know this, and I'm glad you shared that with us, that David felt so strongly about it. So there is an incentive to basically, make your friend and your bandmates' wishes come true by getting this out to the world at some point. It's going to, we understand it's going to take time, but my point is, there is stuff in the can that I'm aware of, and I know it's good. And I was just curious if you guys had any game plan as far as, making that available in the future. And I'm glad to hear that you do.
Well, the hallmark of Junkyard is terrible game planning. So, we're just shit at it.
You touched on being at the hospital, and I thought it was really just, one of the things I've really appreciated out of all this situation is the brotherhood and the camaraderie that's just blatantly obvious to anyone that's paying attention. I mean, you guys flew out to the hospital to be with him. You watched him and his wife Jennifer get married. You flew to Austin for his memorial service. There was like this brotherhood is very much alive, and I think that's kind of rare, and I love it, because I think one of the things that people like about Junkyard is just the realness of it, just the gritty realness and the humanity of it. It's not artificial. It's not superficial. It's not shiny, new, glossy. It's just everyday life. And And with everyday life comes everyday emotions. And it strikes me that the emotions among you guys are all still very much alive and well. I mean, Brian Baker, I was not expecting to see him in Austin.
I'm still pissed that I did. I hugged all you motherfuckers except Brian. I mean, was he incognito? I didn't, I was looking for everyone. I just totally missed Brian. And
You're
I'm
otherwise
still
occupied. It's okay. He understands. It's okay.
He was sitting right in front of you when you were reading out of your yearbook.
Right there.
I can't believe that he was invisible. He had his cloaking device on for, Jason's not going to see me, so please tell him that I got to get me some Brian soon.
Yeah.
Tell him I said hi, and I'm so sorry that I missed him at that.
We were, I was going to also ask, here I go again. I did this in the last episode. Oh, I know what it was. The last episode, I asked Chris and Pat if there was a moment in Junkyard's career where you guys all looked at each other, and especially at David, and went, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe we've driven this thing from the bars to, opening for Skinner or to having our video on MTV. Was there ever a funny story where you guys just looked at each other and went, I can't believe this is happening. Silly, little old us, here we are.
Yeah, I think it was when we were at, right before, when we showed up at the venue, the very first show with Skinner. It was in Nashville, and it was one of the sheds, I forget which one, and just walking around, because the biggest thing we had done was we had opened up for Almighty in the UK up to that point, and then we got on this Skinner thing, and we show up, and we're walking around this, the hallways and looking at everything, and the food sitting there laid out in the hallways, and just we were high as kites, man. Just not figuratively, but it just pinched me. This is great. And then I don't think I can't remember if we got a sound check or not. I think we got to a line check, maybe do a song, and just the sound coming off the stage and the lighting rig and everything was just kind of like everything you dream about when you're a kid and in bands and stuff. Like one day I want to play on a stage like that. And so it was kind of that kind of thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim?
Yeah.
I think it was pretty early in my tenure, I guess, the early 2000s. We played this festival, Series Z, which is really what set us up and to be, in Spain for the times when we went back and were popular there. But I was walking around with David, and we walk into the venue, and not being us, we're not thinking go through the backstage. We just walk in, and people freaking on David. And I remember going whoa, what is going on here? People know who you are still. And then we played, and Todd was there. It was 3,000, something like that. And the place went barmy. And we're also on the stage with people we really respected, like the Choir Boys and Jason Scorchers. And we just were like, is this really a thing? And then the other one I remember, going back to High Water, because that was the biggest labor, is we were playing M3, which we hadn't done before. And we were, I guess, second to last on the second stage, which I didn't know how that was going to be. We didn't know any of that stuff. And we were in the inevitable minivan driving from the hotel to the venue, or getting in the golf cart or something like that. Jason's done that. And it's a great venue. Merriweather's a great venue. Mm-hmm. And the phone rings, and it's our record company saying, your album's going to chart. And I said, what? I said, your album's charting on the hard rock chart. I'm like, what? He's like, you're coming in at number 24. And I remember just turning the guys our album, Billboard just called, the album's charting, and you could have knocked us all over with a feather. We're like, what? What? Our album. And then we played I don't know how many were there, 3,000, 4,000. If you ever see those great pictures from the behind the stage. And it was shocked. We were all just this is crazy. It was definitely a sense of it was nice to have Europe and all this, but to be able to do it in your home country, be an American, have that kind of second life almost was no matter what, we kind of did it. You know, will ever get bigger than this? Probably not. But here we are. And then we played, and the show was fantastic because I remember very well, it was between bands, right? And so you're sitting out there waiting to go on, and there's nobody in this field in front of you. And Brian Baker was there.
Yeah, 10 minutes before we're ready to go.
It was like, oh shit, no one knows who we are. After just getting this great high, like, well, we're going to play. So, we've played empty rooms. That's the way it goes. And we're like, well, okay, they're giving us our guarantee, the usual kind of excuses you make. And then all of a sudden it was like, the horde coming over the hill and just hundreds of people coming streaming down into right against the stage. Yeah. And I'm like, and then we go on and it was... Yeah, and we were just like, what the hell? And as far as we could see, there were people. And David loved that because he's like, seated places, he was never that keen on that. It's like, that's not his vibe. He liked the big fields where it's just so he could get out. And I'm sure I think he went out in the crowd and did his usual routine. And, it was just one of those days where like, wow, what a day. Well, hell yeah. Plus, it was sort of my hometown. I'm from right around there. So
yeah, I was going to say, you and Brian, that's y'all's stomping grounds.
I used to go see gigs at Merriweather. I mean, that's where I went. That was the shed nearby me when I'd go see whoever it was, at Bob's Rock Barn, the shed. So
I'm not trying to keep score or make it be about me, but, the Toys play with the Almighty as well.
That's right.
So there's one more thing to add to the whole fruitcake.
Yeah.
The meatloaf, right? Yeah. Yeah.
The stale breadcrumb.
Yeah. I guess, there's the breadcrumb, another breadcrumb to put in the
meatloaf.
Yeah.
I asked this question on the last episode with Chris and Pat, and I'll ask it again here. Just curious to know if now that David is no longer with us physically, is there anything in the course of your average day that makes you think of him? Is there like a song on the radio, a commercial on TV, a car that drives by? Is there anything that makes you catch yourself and go, that's totally David. There's something so David about that. I remember him because of this.
I think it's interesting because, we talked about this mob of guys, this group, this family. He's the first to go, really, of the close-knit. One of the Flies on Fire guy died. I didn't know him as well, but he's with like someone this close to me, this close of a working relationship. I've never really, I can't think. I mean, yes, I've lost my parents and, we've all deal with that all the time, but this kind of intimate relationship, I think about, I don't really listen to Junkyard. I just don't. I probably won't. It's it's a little too close. It's like,
is it painful for you to listen to?
Oh, because it's like when I hear a song, I was saying to you, like you put that what is it, I Come Crawling on the promo, and I went right back to sitting on David's bed, staring him in that apartment in East Hollywood, me and him writing the lyric. I was right there again. Happens all the time. So that second that happens, and then you're kind of like, oh shit, we were 23-year-old kids staring at each other, trying to write some lyrics, and before we went off to the club, and all of that comes flooding back. So it happens all the time. And maybe I'm trying to just, it hasn't really set in because life intervenes. We all have busy lives, and David and I could have a fractured relationship. I mean, I think he would say it as, he would say we're the Lennon McCartney of hair metal, which I know he was kidding, or he better fucking been kidding. But, I think we could have a fractured relationship because we had we could butt heads creatively David. In a lot of ways. And it was, so sometimes there was times when he's the last person I wanted to see darken my door. There was definitely times like that, long periods of time. And he was that kind of a person. He was not an easy person necessarily to be really close to. But that doesn't mean I didn't love him. Of course I loved him. We did so much together. There's a lot of hours in back of vans. Jason knows all about this. And whether or not you think that person is the perfect person, they're the person that's with you when all that happens.
You become brothers and family.
Yeah. And you just
fight and argue and throw rocks at each other.
Of course, yeah.
And I don't think of that shitty stuff anymore, which is good. But I think of the art, because when I hear the art, especially the stuff we did together, I'm like right back in that room or in that studio or when that happened, at least in my mind's eye. And it's, it's heavy. It's a drag. that part's just a drag. There's no getting around it. You know, I mean, I know people lose people in bands and they, you know, maybe, you know, time doesn't necessarily heal the wounds. It just makes it something that you know where it is. You can put it in the place. But I don't try to process grief. I think grief is going to run its river, and you are just you're in the boat, and you just got to go with it. So, you know, when I say I don't really listen to Junkyard, I'm like, yeah, I don't listen to Junkyard before anyway. I'm in Junkyard. Interested in me as hopefully other people are.
Yeah, Chris touched on all of this the other day on our you know, David Roach Part 1. I've been calling it.
This is Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, this is Volume 2. Yeah, good.
I'd have a Part 2.
He was saying, Chris was just saying, you know, I don't listen to myself. I don't listen to myself. You know, when you're checking mixes and mastering and you know, demos, and that's different than I know what he means when he says I don't listen to myself. But I don't think that's really what we're asking either. You know, I think the reminders are going to come when they come.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the way they are with me. It could be, it's nothing specific. They just pop out of nowhere. And, you know, as time has gone on, not quite as often. And I think that's natural. But then there'll be something, you know, the night he passed, I live in West Hollywood, and I live in a building that's got a rooftop patio, kind of like place to hang out. It's where I go and drink coffee, and, you know, I get claustrophobic, so I go up there and spend a lot of time up there. And I was up there having a beer and kind of just processing, you know, just listening to my head. And anyways, 4 owls. I started hearing these owls start hooting, and looked around, and I spotted one, spotted another one, and then I go, holy shit, there's 2 other ones. And then I said, that's an omen, you know. And so being me, I Googled it and I checked, and it was, you know, American Indians, owls, the symbolism between, you know, for owls and death are really interesting if anybody wants to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that kind of shit.
Yeah, it was really, really kind of nice and comforting in a way. But, you know, on the flip side of the coin, it was, you know, it just felt right, you know. It felt like these guys were, you know, telling me, okay, David's going to be fine.
He's up here flying with us. It's better off.
Yeah. Well, I think that owls, hold that thought, please. I think that just to nerd out for a second, sorry, put on the nerd hat for one moment. I don't know, because I'm not known to Google much, but the point, I think owls, when they're hooting at each other like that, and when there's fucking 4 of them, that's an anomaly. I don't know anything about that. Yeah. I think that they're talking to each other, letting each other know how far away from each other they are.
Yeah.
And I like to think that is maybe related to how you were feeling about David.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. But it was interesting. I told Jennifer at the after the memorial down by the creek when we were at the restaurant, and she really, you know, she enjoyed that story. But yeah, nothing specifically will trigger something. I you know, sometimes when I hear like the intro to a football game, maybe, because I know he loved watching football on TV, and if I hear that, you know, that coming up, blah blah blah, and I go, oh, I wonder if David's watching this. You know?
The fanfare.
Yeah, that fan. I guess that's what you call it, right? That pregame, you know, hype music.
Tonight. Yeah.
Totally
fanfare. Yeah.
I love that.
We'd be stuck in an airport, or, you know, we'd be in, he'd always search out the TV. If we were on the road in a van, he would fucking be cussing and like, God damn it, we're going to be late. I can't see this, you know. He was really into
Texas
that.
football game.
Yeah. It was, yeah.
Then just cursing
relationship with the Aggies.
Cursing the Longhorns just all the time.
Yeah, the Longhorns.
Well, some of those kind of obsessions, those guys have, like, you know, all of those apps, those college football, whatever apps on their phone, and they're constantly just have their phone in their face in the back of a van on tour. They're just looking at all the stats and all all that shit, watching video clips and gearing up, you know.
Yes.
But I can't see David being that guy either. So
he wasn't as sport crazy that way. He just loved the teams he loved.
Oh,
He
right.
loved the Longhorns.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say though, and I think Todd would agree with me. We were so, as a band, I don't know if we've said this, we were so moved, and well, first of all, by the level of outpouring from the, let's call it legitimate press. I don't know how much that's just created by the stream feeding itself and all that other stuff, but you know,
I think they called it the bots. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of it was
okay.
real, some of it was whatever it was. I mean, I did a long interview with Polestar, Kat Turman, and but most of all, all of us were really moved by, you know, the level of, you know, emotion from the fan base. First of all, how large the fan base was, and we want to thank everyone for that, for all the years that they've always been. Our fans are great. They're really supportive. I have come to, you know, having a fan base at all is a real gift. It really is, and we really did appreciate it. I know David loved his fans, and some people were more involved than others. You know, some people come in, come out. Obviously, life intervenes. There were some hardcores that have the tattoos, whatever that level is. We always really appreciated that people would turn up and be interested. So we, you know, and I know he did as well. He made as much time for his fans as he possibly could, maybe to his detriment, but he did. But we were all moved by the level of outpouring from the fans that we saw on social media and everything, and probably set back on our heels a bit. We were a little bit surprised. We didn't realize, well, you know, not only his impact, whatever part we played in him having impact on people's lives, how deep that was. You can be in your bubble, you know, and I always say on a Cleveland a Friday night and it doesn't feel like you're connecting that much with the world, you know, but when you step back now and it's obviously come to an end, it's really, it was really heartwarming and kind of, I mean, took our breath away a little bit. Like I didn't really know how to react. I don't know if we're supposed to say things. I don't really like to say things,
lots of confusion.
So, but we want to say, anyone's listening who's a fan, like we appreciate it. We read them all. We saw it all. We followed it all. Because we don't comment on it all doesn't mean we aren't aware of it. When we are all in contact with each other all the time still, the other members of Junkyard, as Dave was talking about, that, you know, this is, you know, we've been in this together for so long. So we are good. We are looking out for each other. We always have. Obviously, this is a big, you know, this is obviously a big cut. And we will, you know, heal. The cut will heal, but there will be scars. But we are just so appreciative that everyone who spent the time to say how he felt about them and let the band into their lives in any way, knowing all the stuff that goes on in our lives. Just because we don't sit there and comment on every single thing, it doesn't mean we haven't really, you know, dug in, and we're really moved by it and super appreciative. And I know most importantly, his family was. His son Ray, his wife, his siblings who are great. I know that was really awesome for them. And so I want to thank the fans for that as well, because I know that was a real, you know, salve for them in that hard time, that they knew that he was loved so much. And so I want, once again, thank you to the fans. Thank you to the fans for being there in the beginning and then also really bringing it home at the end.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better way to wrap this up than that right there. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I also was pleasantly shocked at the level of outpouring from all over the world, from all types of media. It was really heartwarming that kind of attention was focused on a guy that we all know to be just so humble and genuine and free of ego. And I said it before, and I'll always say it, he probably would have been embarrassed by it all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But for us, for those of us who know this about him and know he deserves it, it was really validating and, more importantly, just heartwarming that he got that kind of recognition and that kind of love from all over the world. So, yeah, very well said, Tim.
I think that they know that you're appreciative. I think that they know. I love it that you're putting your heart on the table for everyone who was outpouring with how, their experiences and all of the stories that they told, you guys.
Yeah.
Stories that they told, and how, like, they walk in and David's sitting at the bar and there's no one else is there. And it's like, they just go sit down next to him, and an hour later they're having dinner, or he welcomes them into sound check, and it happened 1,000 times.
Yeah,
I saw it happen almost every time we played.
Yeah,
he didn't like sound check, so he'd disappear, and he'd end up talking to either a person that was going to come see us later, or somebody he just met. He loved meeting people and talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
I think that it's part of what Tim was saying too. If you know, right? And I think that they really did know, but I really love that you are reaching out and just giving the world a big hug back.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. I know I know parts of it were difficult, but more than anything, Jason and I wanted to do this in 2 parts because we felt like David deserves it, and
absolutely,
he was a friend to us all, a bandmate to some of us, and will be missed. But as Jason said earlier in the episode, we got the catalog of music. He'll always be with us in our ears and in our hearts and in our memories, because he made himself so available to so many people. So we do appreciate you spending time and sharing your insight and your personal stories with us today. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Tim Mosher and Todd Muscat from Junkyard on the Talk Louder podcast.